Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 12 of Ferg's Footy Fanfare. We hit the double figures a couple of weeks ago, and now we've hit the dozen. Thank you, everyone, for your support. So we've actually got a lot to cover tonight, especially on this day, Monday, the 14th of September. So retirements, re-signings, injuries, few upsets, and a lot of other things to discuss to unfold from round 17 of the AFL season. Always joined by my great cousin, Jay. Jay, how we going, mate?
Yeah, good, Nedwood. Thanks for having us again. It's good that we're getting through these with a bit more consistency now. Like you said, there's a lot that's been happening this week, and with the week leading into the last round, there's a lot of games hanging with finals repercussions. So plenty to get through tonight.
Yeah, well, so out of our 9 games that we'll have, 4 of them are going to be very telling for the race for the top 8. But I suppose we'll just start off, with the fresh news today. Hawthorn captain Ben Stratton and veteran small forward Paul Puopolo have announced that this season will be their final season. So one big question out of this, Stratton, obviously the captain of the Hawks, who takes over?
Yeah, well, I heard earlier on today that Jordan Lewis was saying James Sicily might be the next man for the job. He seems to possess a lot of leadership qualities, perhaps gets a little bit too hot-headed. But I think that's the kind of thing that you want to see from a fan perspective. You want to see that real passion there. And, I'm sure that a lot of the boys around the club as well, get motivated from that kind of showing. Regardless of whether, there's question marks about Stratton and Puopolo being in starting 22 anymore, such valuable servants to the game, both 3-time premiership players. So regardless whether it's on or off the field, they'll be sorely missed, and congratulations on their career.
Yeah, about Sicily, I think Sicily would be a very good fit. You say that he maybe goes over the top every now and then, but watching him play, he's just an ultimate competitor. He loves getting in the contest, and he loves being in the fight, and he's the first one always on the line. So I think James Sicily would be a very logical selection. And then other news that has not been confirmed, but it's set to be that Cade Simpson will play his last game for the Blues this weekend. And there is also question marks about the future of Eddie Betts, in which I think Eddie Betts will play for another year. I can't see why Carlton would have recruited Betts just to play for 1 year. I think if you're going to recruit someone, you're going to want a couple of years out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Betts will stay on for another year if he feels that he's capable of doing that. Cade Simpson, once again, one of their most reliable and consistent players as well. You've got to feel sorry for him holding the record of having the most losses as a VFL, AFL player. But I guess that's what you get if you're a player that's played so many games, and unfortunately for the Carlton Football Club as well.
Yeah. So also other news today is, I don't know if it's been fully confirmed, but it's seems that Tom Patley will stay at the Sydney Swans despite wanting out in the last trade period, which I think was going to be as a ramification of Joe Danaher possibly going up to Sydney. But he seems to be committed to Sydney now.
That's right. And I mean, with the injury issues that Lance Franklin's had this year, it's now clear that even if Franklin were to come back, that Papley's the main man, be tending to evolve a bit more around him. And as you and I were speaking, I might have been last episode or the episode prior, we'd have him in our All-Australian before Charlie Cameron. So that's Sydney's done an excellent job, both in their management and as a club, to keep Papley for his services, and he'll be the better for it. They'll be able to build a team around him.
Yeah, I think I haven't minded the way the Swans have gone about their games this year. They've they've obviously lost most of their games, but there seems to be a fair few games that they've been in, and obviously, we won't lead into it now, but there's a big question mark about Carlton after falling to the Crows.
Yeah.
But other news, 2 ACL injuries on the weekend. Ivan Soldo for the Tigers. He did his ACL and also his medial ligament. And Toby McLean for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, both those teams, you'd assume definitely Richmond top 4 and Western Bulldogs playing finals. Toby McLean, he's really started to get into decent form in the last few weeks. Bit quiet at the start of the year, but he was pivotal as part of that Mosquito Brigade in their 2016 run. He's very handy, very quick, nippy in the forward line. Soldo, obviously going to be a loss. He makes it in their top 22, but, they do have the services of plenty other tools. They've got Nankervis, obviously, as their main ruckman. They have Chol waiting on the bench as well. And I'm not too sure if this is the case, because Bolter also been used in the ruck previously, or?
Yes, I do remember round 1 in 2019. Noah Bolter played his first game, and he played a lot of ruck time. I still very much like his services in the back line, but there's David Asprey still to come back, so maybe he starts to be used as more of a utility.
Yeah, it just raises a few more questions for them. But I think that they'll be able to cover for it given the quality in their list.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the big question mark around Carlton, I mean, I think I mentioned the last episode that it seems, from the end of last year, the whole Teague train thing and throughout parts of this year that it looks like they take a step forward and they're looking like they're going to be in that, they're going to start contending, and then it seems that they take 2 steps back, and they played very poorly against Sydney. Were very lucky to get away with a victory, and then that shamble that they dished up against the Crows. Not taking anything away from the Crows, I thought the Crows played very well, much like their last 2 weeks. They really brought heat to the ball and just made it hard for Carlton to get some nice, clean disposal going.
Yeah, you wouldn't have believed that Adelaide, went 0-13, and we'll touch on that briefly later on. But, given from a Carlton perspective, however smaller their chances were of making finals, if results went their way and they won, they still had the potential of playing finals heading into that game. And with the effort that they dished up in the first half, it's diabolical, really. It's inexcusable. And I feel like their fans would be on a similar train of thought. They've got a lot of questions that they need to ask themselves. They need to go off into the preseason. They're talking again about having a big trade period. And then again, it raises questions, around Eddie Betts. Paddy Dow, I've heard his name in a fair bit of speculation, given he's a number 3 draft pick or something, and hasn't quite lived up to that expectation. Look, they've got a lot to do, and you're 100% right. Sometimes they look the part, but they're starting to get that really negative kind of focus around them of slipping up too often.
Yeah, and also the loss of Kade Simpson will be quite big. He's been Mr. Reliable probably about the last 5 seasons now for Carlton. And obviously drawing back to the retirements of Stratton and Puopolo, I did hear Paul Puopolo speak on the radio about how that he was willing to make way for a younger player to come through and develop. And so I think we've discussed this a few times over previous episodes about where Hawthorn stand, and I think very much now you can see that a rebuild is now inevitable, that they're looking to bring kids through and develop their list around O'Meara and Sicily and Mitchell and Warple.
Yeah, spot on. I think even in the last few rounds, their desire to grow their youth has become a lot more prominent. I think they've had something like 5 debutants in the last 3 weeks. So they're really focusing on that. I do think that them keeping Burgoyne for a season will be handy. It'll kind of, lessen the loss of Stratton and Puopolo. They'll keep some form of experience at the club. And I think that's vital, especially when you start dealing with a young list. I feel like if you get rid of too much experience, you can leave a gaping hole into not only in the way that they play, but also the culture around the club. And obviously Hawthorn's been able to build a fantastic culture, competitive and successful one. They'd want to pass that on to the younger players as well. So keeping Burgoyne's an excellent decision.
Yeah, they've always been good in their list management. Hawthorn have been able to keep experience, but also bring in younger or, less experienced players. And, I forgot to mention about Burgoyne signing on for another year, and that 2021 will be his final season. But I think Burgoyne definitely does have another year in him. I think the way he plays, he's he's a very good leader, and I mean he gets his nickname Silk for obvious reasons, that he's just such a crafty player with the ball, and just having a very good ball user like someone like Burgoyne would just take a lot of pressure off younger players coming in thinking, oh no, like I have to hit all these kicks and all that and hit all these targets and create all this ball movement. Whereas, Burgoyne can naturally take the load off these sorts of players.
I concur wholeheartedly. No, but that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a fantastic player. He's dipped off a little bit in form this year, but he still has that ability to not look flustered on the ball, to really generate some form of movement out of the back line. And I'm sure that's the role that he'll possess next year as well.
Yeah, so we just Adelaide on the chart 3 in a row. They've come back from 0-13. So we had a few big games on the weekend. Obviously, we discussed in the last episode that GWS and Melbourne would be the biggest game of the round. And obviously, due to the ramifications of what would happen to the loser, and the winner keeps their finals chances very much alive. And Melbourne got the chocolates, and GWS are wearing the heartache and the pain.
That's right. I made sure to watch this whole game, and it was, it was a close game, but it kind of really illustrated where the clubs are at the moment, And I'm still of the belief that GWS, if they make it, Melbourne, if they make it, St Kilda, if they make it, I think they'd just be there to make up the numbers of finals. But in saying that, it was a very close game between the two. I thought Melbourne were the better team throughout. They probably let GWS get a bit too close in many aspects. But, they've essentially made it impossible for GWS. They're going to have a huge win against St Kilda. And, Melbourne's still about 5% behind St Kilda. So, and we've also got tonight's game coming through, which, is about to start any second. That'll also be important because Collingwood, as we know, and we will come to, have a difficult game next week. How did you find the Melbourne GWS game?
Yeah, I think you summed it up very well. GWS just got on a little march and sort of caught Melbourne blindsided. But credit to Melbourne, they were able to, grind it out. And I think that really shows who the better team is, because we always talk about the good teams always find a way to win despite being challenged, regardless of their opposition. If their opposition is second on the ladder or bottom of the ladder, they find a way to win. And Melbourne proved to be the better side by being able to just find a way to win.
Spot on, yeah. And it keeps the it keeps the entertainment and the spectacle of this week going, which is good for all footy fans, really.
Yeah, so obviously, we've got the race for the 8. So we've got 4 games. Like what I said earlier, we have Melbourne and Essendon.
Oh, before we do that, do we want to hype up your team a little bit? You're going to go straight past them as if they didn't just knock off the flag favourites.
No, it was a good game. Yeah, they really controlled the game. It was very much like the West Coast game a few weeks ago. Just never really, and I mean they actually did allow Geelong to play their game of real control football, but Geelong were just never able to be hurtful on the scoreboard.
Yeah,
And
in my eyes, it was such a dominant display from Richmond. They never looked flustered at any stage throughout that. Even though there are times where it wasn't all coming together, and there a brief period where you were quite inaccurate in front of goal, couldn't really put it on the scoreboard.
Well, I reckon out of the 15 behinds that was scored, that I think there was probably about half a dozen to 5 conceded behinds, like spoils over line, rush behind. So you probably take those out, and it's probably 7, 10, 7, 7, 9, which in the end probably isn't too bad of a score line.
Yeah, like they were just dominant, and I probably toss and turn too much over these. But from that performance, if Geelong had lost by 2 goals, I would still have them as the flag favourites. But the just the way that Richmond was able to, you're 100% right in let Geelong play their game plan, but also to really counter that, which no team has really been able to do this year. It's hard to go past them as flag favourites now.
Yeah, it was a bit of a different contrast to the West Coast game because Richmond really nullified West Coast in allowing them to play that controlled game, whereas, in the Geelong game, Richmond said you can go and play a controlled game, and we'll just make sure it doesn't hurt us on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Dylan Grimes is fantastic, as per usual. The development of Noah Bolter seems to continue. I think he did a very good job on Tom Hawkins.
Yeah.
I think I sent you a message saying that he gave Tom Hawkins a bit of a bath. And I think that was this could be a bit of an undoing for Geelong for mine, is that they only have really that one key target in Tom Hawkins. And when you come up against a team with a good team defense, and we probably saw that, I can't remember the game full off the top of my mind, but the West Coast Geelong game over in Perth, West Coast play a very good team defense. So I think the teams that play a really good team defense would be able to, really expose that Geelong really try to go for Hawkins. And then as a result of that, Patrick Dangerfield actually moved into the forward line, and they just lost that real potency. They absolutely dominated the clearances, but they weren't dangerous on their clearances. Like, they would clear it and Richmond were able to defend.
Something that Geelong really relies on, and a lot of the best teams do, is being clean with the ball, but then more so because they do rely on that uncontested, at times slow ball movement. So you're 100% correct. When they're forced to play slow, and a team like Richmond has good backline and a good team defense, it requires that need for clean to be even more so apparent. And when they're off, then that's when you start getting the bombing in. And then that's when a team like Richmond is able to really counterpunch.
Yeah, well, did you watch the game?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. How many sideways kicks were there from Geelong? Geelong really, going sideways and just not able to be potent with their control of the ball.
They really do love to just play it slow when they need to. I know that's how they undid St Kilda. Uncontested marks, small kicks, very precise. So once you put them under enough pressure for them to get a little bit inaccurate, then that's when you really got to make them pay. And they've got a very good backline as well. So credit to Richmond for being able to get through that and end up having 22 scoring shots.
Yep. So that's that. So now we talk about the race to the 8. So there's 4 games that I mentioned that will have ramifications on the final 8. So obviously we've got the game going on now, which we would expect Collingwood to win.
Yeah.
So if we say in that Collingwood win, so we have 4 games. Melbourne, Essendon. I know Essendon cannot make finals, but that's big for Melbourne's chances. And then we have Western Bulldogs against Fremantle.
Mm-hmm.
Very much the same as the Melbourne Essendon game, that Fremantle can't really make finals, but the way they're playing, that they can really make that a very difficult game for the Bulldogs. And then
That's exactly right.
Collingwood Port, you know what Port are going to dish up. They've been the top team all year, and Collingwood are starting to get some very good players back as of tonight. And then GWS St Kilda, which will be my match of the round. So I'll let you dissect some of these games and what you feel about the ramifications for the final 8 that we will see after next round.
Well, as stated previously when talking about Melbourne, they need to come out and they need to have a big win against Essendon. Now, given everything that's happened off-field in the past week, I think that it is possible to a certain extent. There seems to be a lot of, disrupted chemistry in the Essendon camp at the moment, given that Worsfold's leaving. He's had a few firing shots at the way things are going. Do I think that they're going to be able to have a big enough win to climb up, 5, 6, 7%, which it looks like they will need to? I don't think that's the case. So unless something magical happens, I think that Melbourne might just miss out. In terms of the Dogs and Fremantle, that's going to be a great game because Fremantle have been playing so well recently. But, the Dogs looked very clean on Sunday against the Hawks. And they had that midfield domination. Bontempelli played quite well. McRae chimed in as usual, same with Hunter, and Daniel was best on ground. So I'd say that, the Dogs would be likely to win and make finals. Let's just have a look at the ladder. And that would be more interesting if Melbourne were to get the win and the Dogs weren't. So the Dogs would slip out from there. Port Adelaide, Collingwood, I think it's imperative that Collingwood win tonight because I don't see them beating Port Adelaide. And
as you say, that Gold Coast will be having a shot on goal right now to get the lead.
Yeah, so they desperately need to win this. But in saying that, it wouldn't surprise me. Collingwood, experienced mob, they'll know what they're playing for against Port Adelaide. If they lose tonight, they're every chance of getting the job done. In terms of St Kilda and GWS, you'd think that GWS are also out unless they absolutely pummel St Kilda. I know St Kilda isn't playing great footy at the moment, but GWS isn't playing great footy either. So even if GWS do manage to win, I don't think they'll be able to rectify a 10% swing.
Yeah. That's very true. So from what we think that, do we think that the top 4 is set? But Richmond, West Coast, Geelong all play bottom 4 sides, I think.
Yeah, I think the top 4 is decided. The only thing that might change is the Port Adelaide-Brisbane one, and that's if Collingwood managed to get the win. But I wouldn't have thought so. So, I know that you're sitting pretty in 3rd place and you're more than happy to stay there as long as Brisbane stay in 2nd.
Yeah, I think Brisbane would be a much easier qualifying final than Port Adelaide.
Given the wood that you guys have over them, and I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago, but they have, they've lost their last 2 finals. They went out in straight sets last year, played both games at the Gabba. So that kind of confidence that everyone thinks that they might have there, I'm not 100% sure about.
And the thing is as well, in that, the first final to Richmond was obviously going to be an ask because not tooting my own team's horn, but Richmond have probably been the best side in the competition over the last 3 years. But to lose at home to a very undermanned GWS side, I think that was a real true reflection of them last year. And of course, you got to think no Harris Andrews, so that's going to leave a big hole coming up against quality forward lines.
That's right, and we speak about it. Their youth, they're players that are just starting to hit the more experienced markers of 100 games. They're going to have to be stepping up this time. They can't go hiding behind the big boys. Your Berries, your Rainers, he needs to step it up and all that. So
Big O.
Yeah, they're going to have plenty of work to do. They're going to have a lot of people aware that they lost their last 2 finals at the Gabba, and they're going to try to do a similar thing this year, regardless of who they play.
Yeah. So I'll go into a little segment that we've been starting to do.
What have we got? Which one?
You know,
Is it time for bloody Ned's nuggets of knowledge or?
yeah. So this one, once again, I'm sort of tooting my own team's horn, but this is it's actually quite big, in regards to you know, the whole history and the whole honour board of the Richmond Football Club. So this game against Adelaide for Richmond, Damien Hardwick will equal Tom Hafey, the great Tom Hafey, in coached games. And Tom Hafey owns the record at 248 games coached for the Richmond Football Club. So the first week of finals, Damien Hardwick will actually surpass the great Tom Hafey.
Goodness me. Geez, that's pretty significant when you think about it. You know, the start that Hardwick had, did he lose his first 10?
It was his first 10 or first 11 or something. And then
Yeah.
obviously there was the whole outcry of the 3 consecutive elimination final losses, and then the real plummet down in 2016.
Yeah, there was a lot of people calling for his head. I know I had a bet with my old man over who would go first between Hardwick and Buckley.
Yeah, I wanted Hardwick's head at the end of 2016, but full credit to him. And, you know, now he's probably going to forever sit as probably Richmond's second greatest coach of all time, depending on what happens in the future. But, yeah.
That's it. I mean, I know, for example, St Kilda, I think their longest serving coach is Alan Jeans, but I think second place is Alan Richardson, which just goes to show, you know, how often St Kilda get rid of their coaches. So,
But Hardwick has nowhere near the record that Hafey has.
right. I was going to say, because during that period, you guys were unassailable, really.
So it was 67, 69, 73, 74 under Hafey.
Yeah.
And then 80 was Tony Jewell.
Yeah, no, it was quite a, you know, dominant period. And so makes sense that Hardwick is definitely probably number 2.
Yeah.
Consider, but, you know, like you've said, and, you know, like we've made mention of, it's not unlikely for Richmond to keep doing what they're doing for years to come.
Yeah, we never know. We won't know until Hardwick's done with, and then we can probably make a fair assessment. So other news coming out. So obviously we've had the 16-minute quarters going throughout this season, and that same thing is going to continue through the finals. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this, because I'm actually very against this. I think, considering that we're rolling with the same sort of fixture, we're not doing any frenzy sort of thing for finals. We're going to have the week off beforehand. I can't justify the 16-minute quarters for finals.
Yeah, look, I'm going to disagree with you here, Ned. And, you know, it's purely because we've had it this season. I firstly want to state that I don't want this to continue, you know, into next season and so on. I'm a big fan of the 20-minute quarters and stuff like that. But I think that I don't think it would be right if you were to play the regular season under one set of rules and then the finals under another set of rules. So even if it's just in terms of time per quarter, I think that's probably the right decision for this year and this year only to have 16-minute quarters.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah. So another thing as well is the shorter quarters. I'm not the shorter quarters. My bad. The low scoring. So low scoring has been a big thing. And especially you see the old boomers coming out going, "Oh, remember the 1989 grand final.
Yeah.
Which still to mine is the most overrated grand
I
final of
reckon
all
that is as
time.
well. They were 10 goals down at
Because,
three-quarter time, for Christ's sakes.
mate, these people thinking, oh, this was such a tough game and all that. Watch 1973. Watch what Richmond did to Carlton. Took out their best player.
Yeah,
And lots of grand finals and I'm not just saying that one, but there are other grand finals like that, where the best player from a side would be taken out. So, for mine, 1989 is very overrated, and well, I think it's just the way that teams are able to adapt, the way coaches are able to adapt with their systems and all that. And I mean, realistically, if your opposition aren't scoring, then that's going to give you the best chance to win the game. And for mine, you're going to do whatever it takes to win yourself the game.
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting. We always see, the shifts from what kind of approach you use to get into a grand final and what teams like to adapt. So in the last 5 years, we've started to see, that quick handball, that chaos football that Western Bulldogs picked up, and then, Richmond have perfected. I'm wondering what the next thing is. Something that was really brought to my attention was St Kilda Hawthorn. In the first quarter, there was 9 goals scored between the two teams. And then for the rest of the game, there was 9 goals scored. Now, at quarter time, it was 3 points the difference.
There's a lot of control from St Kilda in that game, though, going forth in the second quarter. So maybe it's controlled football, maybe, where it's going back to. Is it just going to be something that goes around in circles in a way? I mean, we obviously saw the Ross Lyon, Paul Roux sort of era. We saw, and then we obviously saw the chaos football from Richmond and the Bulldogs in 17 and 16. And then 2018, we saw West Coast win the premiership playing very well-controlled football.
It's just evolution of football and its tactics, so that someone's going to find out in within the next couple of years, a style that consistently beats Richmond style and other styles. Because there's people that can beat Richmond style but can't beat other people's style. Or there's people that can put it up to the rest of the clubs but then can't beat Richmond. Geelong have that issue. They can beat a lot of other clubs, but they don't work well when they're getting faced with that chaos ball that Richmond brings. So it's just an evolution, and there's going to be a club eventually that finds it. So I'm just trying to figure out what the actual step will be that makes that.
So I'm not tooting Richmond's horn, but I think we find this way to have this really good balance of defense plus that chaos sort of ball.
Yeah.
Richmond don't like to control the ball. Like, we like to control the ball going out of half back, but once it sort of hits that center line going forward, it's chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I couldn't tell you what the next hint's going to be, but I wonder whether teams try to actively score more, considering we are in a bit of lull where scoring's lower. People are so scared of turning it over because the majority of score comes from turnover these days. I just wonder if someone's going to have enough courage to try and completely change the style.
Yeah, and that's what we saw out of the Bulldogs.
In
2016, that they were real chaos, not much fear of turning it over, and but whereas then you started seeing Richmond and West Coast really, getting that high scoring off turnover.
Yeah.
And the 6-6-6 thing may have brought it in for clearance. I think a lot of people thought that, the clearance game was going to be the thing with the 6-6-6 ruling, but that hasn't eventuated.
That's it. I think that as a collective, as a football collective, we probably looked a little bit too much into it, thinking this is going to be the change that increases scoring. And I mean, it's great for centre clearances, but at the end of the day, if there's not many centre clearances won and lost, then there's not too much different that occurs with scoring. So, because think about it realistically, centre clearance occurs within 5 seconds. You can have 2 people back if you have your wingman start on the edge of the centre square. So,
yeah, that's right. So in leading from that, another thing I thought about during the week was the 50-meter penalty. I think personally, and we know that the league is trying to be harsh, and we probably see a lot more 50-meter penalties nowadays than what we probably did go back 10, 15 years ago. Is 50-meter penalty too harsh? Because I personally think the 50-meter penalty is too harsh. I'd say it brought back to something like a 25-meter penalty, or whenever I discuss this with the old man, back in my day, it was the 15-meter penalty.
Yeah, and Ned, I totally agree with you. I think that the 50-meter penalty in some instances is too harsh. I think that it could be a bit more based on merit as opposed to like the intent. If there's malice in it, you know. So, for example, a late spoil or something, you know, that can leave that up to the discretion of the umpires whether they see fit to give a 50-meter. But so often you see players that are trying to get out of the protected zone, put their hands up. You know, they get pinged for it anyway. They're obviously making an attempt to get out of the zone. 50 meters is just too harsh, especially, you know, if you're going on your mate Unky Unk's theory. People these days can kick 60 meters, you know. All of a sudden you can go from one end of the ground to the other. And
you only got to look at where we're playing this year in our Queensland hubs with the Gabba being such a very short ground.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That, you know, a 50-meter penalty, say, from 45 out from your opposition's goal, really puts you in a very attacking position.
Yeah, I think it's far too harsh. Do I think they'll change it? No, I don't think they'll change it. Not for a couple of years until it gets a bit more airtime. So I'm surprised it hasn't got more airtime.
Is the protected area. So I think this is there's a lot of grey area. I think the protected area needs to be reduced back to, like what you're saying, people try to get out, but they still pay it. But if it's got to be based on someone that's going to try and, you know, influence that next passage of play. That's when it's got to be protected area where they're in a position where they can have a direct impact.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I think that the protected area is pretty well adjudicated. There's only a few real head scratches that occur with them. I think that happens pretty rarely. You know, if I was to if I was to try and dissect a rule that really needs fixing, in my opinion, I don't know what has happened to the 15-meter kick, Ned. Where is it? It's non-existent. Yeah. You can kick it 10 meters these days. If they want to try and generate some quicker football with some more turning and turnovers and higher scoring, start properly adjudicating that, because, you know, they let 7-meter kicks go at times. It's silly.
Well, I've always been a fan. I don't know if this is an actual thing, but the lawn cuttings on the ground, they need to be 15 meters.
Yeah,
they need to be 15 meters squared, and that's only going to help the umpires. That's going to be a better gauge to the umpires that, you know, so pretty much cover that square. All right, that's 15 meters. Didn't quite cover, you know, what I think would be enough to be a full square. That's not 15 meters. It would just make the umpire's job a lot easier.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be an umpire in this day and age. I reckon it's too hard of a gig. So I think any chance that people can make it easier for them, why not? Make the striping on the turf 15 meters.
Yeah. So I think that's about it for what we'll cover tonight. I think we just uncovered a lot of things in news and just things to discuss, which, I don't mind doing. I think it's good because there's always a lot to discuss in AFL football.
That's it. Headlines breaking every hour.
Yeah, so it was an absolute pleasure to be with you, Jay, and we'll discuss hopefully sometime later in the week. We don't have a game until Thursday.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Hopefully we see the red, white and black playing finals football. But I don't know.
I don't think you have anything to worry about, son.
Hopefully not.
I think St Kilda will be playing finals.
All right, good talking with you, Nettie.
Cheers, Jay.